Welcome to the Food Startups Podcast. Thanks for joining us. Today we are on our 14th episode.
Woo! Yes, sir. And we are coming at you live in person from Medellin. Matt, after months of deliberation, has finally decided to leave the confines of his cozy apartment in Bogota and head over to enemy territory in Medellin. In case you guys don't know, Bogota and Medellin are rivals. So Matt, how does it feel?
It feels good, man, especially it being at Parque RV, right? And this is probably my favorite national park in Colombia. It's amazing. To get here, you have to take a cable car up around Medellin and over the bowl-shaped city and valley into the park.
Yeah, we decided to have this be a special site for us to brainstorm and reflect, because this is a national park that is accessible by metro cable, and there's no other park in the world that's like this, to be quite honest. It's like taking a train to the rainforest, more or less.
Yeah, the tram car ride is really fun, and I know that 6 or 7 years ago, before this park opened, this was a very, very dangerous and difficult park to get to, because it was just, you kind of drive through some rather dangerous neighborhoods and barrios, and it's up around the side of the mountain. But now with this cable car, you can get there in maybe, 45 minutes to an hour from Medellin.
Yeah, it's amazing. The cable car passes over a lot of barriers that are some of the most dangerous in Medellin. You don't go out at night, and it's kind of like rogue territory, so to speak. So it's amazing to see, and it's good to be here, especially because once you get up into the mountains, you also get there's a lot of local and artisanal food here. What else? This is the home of flowers. The flowers of Colombia that you see on Valentine's Day. A lot of them are grown in the city of Santa Elena and around it, and that's actually right by Parque RV.
Right, and a lot of people may not be aware, but in the U.S., over 60% of flowers imported into the U.S. come from Colombia.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's crazy because, it really affects shipping quotes and things like that. And late in January and early in February, if you're shipping something out, especially by plane, you're going to be really affected by the influx of flowers coming in. Let's hop to it. I want to introduce today's topic. What we're talking about today is managing public relations and the visibility of who you and your food companies are in the entrepreneurship world.
In planning for this podcast, we kind of narrowed it down to three main topics, three things that you need to understand. And once you understand this, you can form your PR and visibility plan, which we'll get to at the end of the podcast.
All right, Matt. So the first part that I want to talk to you about is you want to plan who you are to other people. You know who you are day to day, the responsibilities you have as an entrepreneur. But when you start getting visibility, if you have brands, if people know you as an entrepreneur in a certain community, they're going to reach out to you. And you got to be sure about how you're going to respond to people, because all sorts of people from different walks of life and different positions, they're going to reach out and they're going to be like, give me information, give me more, give me something. So how do you think about that? Lead me through that.
So we talk about this, and you have to plan who you want to be as the leader of the company, who your brand is, right? Define your brand, and who you aren't, the person and the company that you do not want to be. So what do I mean by that? You have to develop a consistent image, and you're going to get questions that are difficult to answer. But once you understand who you are, you'll be able to answer them with ease. And we talk about transparency, right? Are you going to be honest about your supply chain, about where you get your products from, how it's put together, and all of the way the food is made? This is especially important with health foods or fair trade.
Absolutely. Here's a good example as to some of the conflicts that come up. In the food business, there are people that are interested in food, and there are people that are interested in business. And sometimes when people ask you about your passion for food and you start talking about your passion for supply chains, they're like, well, you just like the business side of it. And they'll come off with a weird impression. And the other side applies too. Sometimes people think that you're not serious about actually having a sustainable company. So you have to know who. So one thing that I do is I try to ask people what they're interested in talking about with me if they want to set up a meeting. That way I can kind of direct and prepare myself for them.
And when we talk about who you want to be, I work with usually health-based products. So my philosophy is I know I'm going to get these health-based products. And to be fair, I'm not going to be able to answer some of them. Some of these are very, like biology and chemistry type questions that I don't understand. But I try to learn way more than the layman about any of the products I'm working with so I can give intelligent answers. And at the very least, have references to third-party university studies, at least give enough information where they can take that and give that to a medical professional that can give them a better answer as to whether or not it's a good product for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're admitting that you might not be a PhD. Sometimes it can be hard to get past that initial saying that you're not this or this or this. But if you say, hey, listen, I'm going to follow up with you, and I'm actually going to give you this information, well, that allows for another point of contact with a person that's interested in what you're doing, and they appreciate follow-up so much because so much of the science behind things is about doing your diligence. So you're showing that your values are in line with the field.
Okay, so once you have your image defined, now you can move on and start analyzing the media. Who do you want to get in touch with? To do that, you also need to know not just your own agenda, but you need to understand the media's agenda.
Definitely. And once again, preparation comes up huge again, because I think what happens a lot with the media is that when media reach out to you, they've heard about you. They want to overwhelm you with an angle that they have about an article that they're writing, about what type of magazine they're part of. And when they overwhelm you, that can lead you to say things you don't want to. You want to please them and you want to give them good material. But if you know who you are and you make it very clear that you have your own brand, well, that's a very good, strong start because you're able to actually direct them and also avoid really kind of nonsense inquiries.
Yeah, and when you find a columnist on, let's say, an online newspaper blog or maybe a magazine or another podcast, you can review the things that they've written or spoken about, and you know what their readers are looking for. You can look at the comments on these things, and you find out what are the readers looking for. Are they looking for something that's healthy? Are they looking for something that tastes really good? Are they looking for some type of cool novelty effect that they can share? So these are really important things to put together. And it's also, I've been looking at media contacts, and I find that certain media sources, they seem to be more or less affiliated with one of my competitors, which means that either there's some type of money deal there, or it's just not going to work because they've already decided for this type of product we've chosen to recommend this one, and it's easier to recommend one than recommend a bunch of competitors.
Exactly, definitely. With any startup, you're going to be intimidated unless you've been through the gamut before. Whenever media reach out to you, and making sure you do things on your own terms and on your company's terms is really important. One way that you can really get a lot of support that way, I want to move over to our next topic, which is what Matt really aptly put. It's called filtering through the mirage. The mirage is, in any industry, you have a ton of entrepreneurs. What happens is that lots of entrepreneurs, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that I know, they don't click with me in the sense that our values are a little bit different. I'd say, 80, 90%. And then there's going to be a small percentage between 10 and 20 that actually click with me based on where they are in life, based on what their values are, and based on how they treat people. And when I find these people, I really try to culture relationships with them because, for one, Matt, first things first, I get a lot of support from them.
I think you can get a lot of support if you can filter through this. But first off, let's just talk about why we filter. So you may see a lot of brands online. There could be a new type of invention, a product, a company, and they may have 50,000 likes to their Facebook page. And that looks really, really intimidating, right? Maybe you only have 500 Facebook friends, and you're like, wow, someone has 50,000 people liking their page. But what you find is it's possible that this doesn't mean very much. This can be friends, people that found like one of your videos or the content you put out interesting, but they may not really be customers or ambassadors or even people that spread the word of your. This Facebook likes is far from a reliable metric.
Yeah, definitely. Great point. Really great point. I think it's interesting because you want to be able to size up different companies and different entrepreneurs, and sometimes you find that what you see on a website, on the presentation of a product on a Facebook page doesn't match up with the impression that you get from the actual entrepreneur. And a lot of the time, I've met entrepreneurs that I have to, I see that they're super successful. I see that, I can learn a lot from them in certain ways, but some of our core values, well, they just don't agree. In food, it really comes up with just natural food. As far as like really wanting to become an expert in, I really appreciate people who want to become an expert in what they're doing. And if people don't want to, if they want to string a deal together, and they've been really successful in the past, I'm not going to have a ton of, I'm not going to really want to be in touch with them and reaching out to them.
Yeah, I'll tell you a story. I was at a conference in Maryland last year. There was a company, an organics company. I'm not going to name them, but there was a salesman guy, this guy, a New Yorker type guy, no offense to any, but he was just talking about his products. You could tell he was just saying whatever he could to get people interested in the products, to the point where he basically said a certain type of freshwater algae grown in Ecuador is the best because the algae grown in Hawaii was affected by the nuclear disaster in Japan that happened, a couple years ago, which is just a very large claim. But the way he said it, you could tell he was just kind of just throwing out smoke and mirrors to try to make the sale. And that kind of stuck with me, because you have to decide what type of person you want to be and how you're going to sell your products. Earlier we talked in the podcast about filtering through the mirage, right? All these likes, maybe there was a lot of money backing them, so they appear at all the conferences, but maybe the sales aren't there, or it's just revenue and there's not a lot of profit. With Tom, you can kind of start to figure it out when you study the industry. So it's good not to be intimidated initially, but to learn about the company. And then to me, this is kind of a hidden thing. And I learned this a lot from the defense industry because I have some friends that work in it. And there's these multi-million dollar, maybe $100 million type companies that have the most pitiful websites. They look like they were built in 1998. And they paid someone $200 to do it. But you know what? It doesn't matter because they have all these like in-person connections and serious relationships built outside the website, and they make serious cash. So within the food industry, there's some brokers, logistics, sourcing companies that have these same type of websites, but you meet them and you realize they're moving a lot of product.
Yeah, and Matt, you're so right. What stuck out to me when you discussed the defense industry and also this experience with this New Yorker is that there's no replacement actually for human contact when you're figuring out how to filter. What I mean by that is that you really want to culture relationships because spending time with people is the best way to figure out what people are about. Now that applies to everything, but in the food industry, you get to really see kind of what stage people are in and kind of how that matches up or doesn't match up with the company that they have and what the public sees as their company. So if they've been launching a company for 2 years and they've had a strong Facebook presence and a lot of engagement, well, a lot of that might be because they're actually spending dollars on having somebody engage for them while not knowing how to strategize for product. There are different ways and different things to do it. And some entrepreneurs know better than others how to make money, or some And some food entrepreneurs don't really want to make money when it comes down to it as well. And you got to figure out, and by that I mean that, a strong segment of the food industry comes from companies that started out pretty small and artisanally, in an artisanal manner, and they grew, and they did not know the proper way to run a business as far as management, accounting, and operations.
Just to recap, guys, we've talked about planning your image. Who do you want to be? Who do you not want to be? Second, understand the media's agenda. What are they trying to get? You need to appeal to their own interests if you want to get press and coverage. And then third, filtering through the mirage. You may find certain industries where they have tons and tons of media attention and press, but it's not much of a business. And on the other hand, and what I find more interesting are some people don't even have websites that are working, but they have really, really big in-person relationships and they move a lot of product. So putting all of these three things together, you need to develop a plan. Once you have your plan set up, it can be push or pull. What do we mean by that? Push is reaching out to people. Pull is getting people to contact you. And Danny has some ideas on how you can get people to be pulled into your product. Yeah,
I think you want to create a culture and a community around what you're doing. And the best example that I know about that is actually the New York food scene. The New York food scene of growing artisanal food companies has been totally unprecedented in the startup community, to be honest, in the last 10 years. There have just been, hundreds of companies that have started up, mostly located in Brooklyn, where they get a lot of local support. And because a lot of the time they're different companies work in different non-competitive niches. They get to help one another out, and that creates community. And the next step is that with community, you can bring people together and have events. That means having workshops, hosting meetups, basically building a clan around you. And for consumer facing products, that's really, really important, is to get people that are your brand advocates. And then afterwards, you can continue to come out with online content and continue your engagement on the important platforms. But I think a lot of that starts from building that community.
Right on. Yeah. So to pull people, you need to create great content and pull people in. And that's even more powerful when you get a press person that contacts you because they've seen what you've done and like to talk to you about it, as opposed to asking them to feature you. So it can be a combination of push and pull to get your product out there. Well, Danny, this has been great. We're really, really enjoying it up here at this park. I think we're going to walk around, maybe go do the zip line at the Eco Lodge about a couple miles away.
Yeah, by the way, we just we ate a meal of food that had 2 pounds of mashed potatoes and a half a pound of rice along with 3 different meats before. So I think I'm gonna pass on all of that stuff. But Matt, you can go for, you can go for that if you like.
Okay, guys. Well, thanks so much for listening. As always, you can find show notes and links of things that we've talked about in the show at foodstartupspodcast.com.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.